Hey everyone, welcome back to White Sparrow Living, Luke 12:6. This is Wendy. If you're stopping by for the very first time, welcome, and I hope you'll consider hitting that subscribe button down below, as well as the little bell right next to it so that you can be notified every time I upload a brand new video. Today we're going to be doing $5 tree DIYs for your farmhouse home decor, as well as one trash to treasure that really didn't start out as trash, but we're just giving it a new life and doing it over. So if this is your first time, did I already say that? So now without further ado, let's get started. For our first project, we're going to start with this wooden square sign. And then I had another one of these small signs that I used in another project, but we're just going to be using the medallion. And then our Waverly white chalk paint and wax in antique, and then some Mod Podge and some makeup sponges, and then one of these little butterflies that comes from a floral stem, and then a couple of old book pages, our Phillips head screwdriver and Cricut spatula, and then my hot glue gun and my scissors. So I'm going to start by getting my frame ready, and I just used my screwdriver to get the sawtooth hanger out. This screwdriver is really neat because you just put your hand on top and twist it with your other hand, and so I keep those mechanisms for later projects. And so now I'm going to take my backboard out of the frame, and I just go around and gently but firmly push it out so that it doesn't rip or mess up any of the framework. And so I'm going to use my Cricut spatula to get the stickers off. And then using a paintbrush, I'm just going to go in with my Waverly wax in antique and just brush that all the way around on my frame, on the inside, outside, and on the front. This frame, it has a wood grain and I want that to show, but it's very green, and I don't know, I've never seen that before, but it actually took the paint really well and made a really pretty brown wood looking finish when I used the wax on it. So I just covered all of that up, and then I'm going to paint my backboard with my Waverly chalk paint in white and get that all nice and covered. And when I'm painting on a flat surface, I want to do the outsides first, and then I'll go back in for the middle part, and then I'll finish up with going in one direction with my paint strokes, because chalk paint kind of shows the bristle lines every now and then. So now I'm going to take my pretty butterfly, and I'm going to use that chalk paint again and paint him completely white, because I'm going to then put some Mod Podge on top of that and add my old book pages. And the reason I paint it white is because I wasn't sure if the pink and purple would show through the book pages or not. So these book pages came from an old book, and I really liked that they were already browning and turning yellow, so I liked the looks of that. So I just take another paintbrush, and this I use specifically for Mod Podge because it does get it all gooky and icky. So I'm just going to put that page over each of the wings of the butterfly, and then I'm going to cut that out around his wings. And I'm going to also paint the back of his wings because it shouldn't show, but as always, if anything peeks out, because I want the wings to be kind of look like they're flying. So if it does show, you won't see any of the pink or purple. And then finally, after I get it all on there, I'm going to put another layer of Mod Podge on top of the paper. And then I'm going to go back in with a very, very dry brush with my white chalk paint that I already used and set aside, so there's not a whole lot of paint on it. And so I'm going to give it a little bit of a distressed look using the white, and then I'll go back in and hit the edges with my antique wax. But I love butterflies. I'm sure everybody does. But one thing that I really love about just the message of the butterfly that most people don't even maybe realize is I think it's a message from God. So we talk about how God in the beginning, in Old Testament times, he gives us the law and the 10 commandments, and we get his instructions of how to act, how to be, what to do, but we don't quite get it. So because we can't really understand what it is he wants from us, he sends himself. He comes down in the form of Jesus, which we call God in a bod. And so we get the message, we get the Bible, we have all of these instructions, and still sometimes we don't understand. So I think the whole situation with the butterfly where we have the not so lovely centipede that starts out and then goes into the cocoon and then comes out this beautiful butterfly. I think that was a message that he put here from the beginning just to show us exactly the cycle of life. So maybe not so lovely in the beginning, but then we die and it looks coincidentally like a mummified body, and then it becomes a beautiful flying butterfly. So no matter what language you speak, and even if you don't understand the Bible, or what I call Bibleese, because it is hard to understand, this is one way where he's just trying to tell us there is an afterlife, and this is what happens afterwards. So here's what happens when you finish your butterfly. And it's all done, and I think this is so cute, and it was super easy. It was really, really fast. This literally took me about like 20 minutes, and that was just for paint to dry. So this is something that anyone can do, and we're going to put these all together. The first 3 crafts we'll put together onto a tray, but I really love this, and I hope you guys like it too. For our next project, we'll be using a windmill wind chime, and then one of these clay pots. They come in a pack of 2, some Walmart baby's breath, and the one on the left is from Dollar Tree, but I like the lighter stems. And then my glue gun, some Waverly White chalk paint, the wax in antique, some sandpaper, some floral foam, wire cutters, and this one is even easier and quicker than the first one except for paint drying. But I love painting terracotta pots. It's something about the way it kind of just goes into it or something, and it's so smooth, and it dries almost instantly actually. So I'm just going to paint my entire flower pot, and then I'm going to take apart my windmill, and I'm actually just taking the chain off, and I'll save that for something else. And then I'm going to break off at the top of the triangle. It's just kind of soldered on there, so it's very easy. And then I just bent it down to make a straight line, and then I'm going to measure to see how high I want this to go into my pot. And then to break off that wire, you could use wire cutters or a Michael J and have him do it, but it's kind of thick. So if you just rock it back and forth, it'll come off eventually, and it actually gets hot, so you have to watch out for that. Anyway, I'm going to take my Waverly chalk paint in white, and I'm going to paint my windmill. This would be a good time to try using the spray chalk paint. I've had a couple of viewers recommend that, and I do have that in my Amazon store. I just haven't ordered any yet. But in this case, I just took my paintbrush and painted the windmill, and it is a little difficult because you do have the rounded part, the wire skinny parts, and so your paint kind of gets gunked up there and stuff, but it's okay because I want this to look real rustic and messy. And then I'm going to go back in with my sandpaper and sand the edges and make those look all worn and used and rustic looking. So then I'm going to take my floral foam and put some hot glue on the bottom and place it inside of my little pot. And originally I was going to use lamb's ear for this project, but I decided I didn't like the look of it just because it was either just too big for what the size of the pot was, and it kind of overshadowed the windmill that I'm going to stick inside also. So you guys know I always change my mind, and so I did once again and changed it to the baby's breath in the end. So after I put that in there, I decided I also wanted to give it more of the wood that was on our frame, and then the third project will also have some of that wood tone. So I just took a makeup sponge and dipped it into my Waverly wax in antique and just went around the rim of the little planter and just made it not smooth. I wanted this to look like wood, and so I just let some areas be a little darker than others, and the brush strokes you could kind of see in there, and I think it looks like wood. But here it is all done with the baby's breath, and I think this turned out so sweet and cute, and again, super quick, super easy, and for a total of $2 or $3, I guess it would be $3 because of the baby's breath. I think it looks super farmhouse and sweet, and it's going to be really cute on our tray. So for our third piece of the tray, I'm just using this wood home sign, some jute twine, and then again the Waverly White and antique wax. And I'm just going to brush this on very lightly onto the home part, and I'm just going to do the face of it because when you get into the insides, it's a little tedious and gets a little messy, but I liked the neutral wood too, so that was okay for that part to show. So I'm just going to get that on there, and then I'm going to paint the base with my white chalk paint, and then when I'm done with that, I'm going to wrap some jute twine around the base of it a couple of times and just tie it in a knot and cut it off. And then I'm going to take another piece of jute twine and tie a sweet little bow on the O, and I end up changing to the other side from what I originally put. But I don't even know if you could call this a full-on DIY. It's just a super quick way of making the home sign look a little different and a little cuter, but it goes with our little vignette. And generally, when you do a little vignette, you want to have 3 different levels. So this will serve as our lower level. So now for our tray, we'll be using 2 of the large stove covers and then 3 packs of the ping pong balls. And then to paint my balls, I need to use skewers so that I can hold those easier. And I'm going to be using my white chalk paint and antique wax again, my hot glue gun, some E6000, and then all I'm going to do is just poke very easily into each of the ping pong balls, and they will cave in if you push too hard. So I found if you kind of twist it at the same time that you're pushing it in, it won't cave in. Then I put those into a big piece of styrofoam so that they could stand up. Now I'm going to paint my stove covers, and I just used my Waverly White chalk paint and painted those all nice and pretty. And then on one of them, I'm going to paint the inside also because that's going to be the top part that's showing. And even though it's white on the inside, I want it to have the same chalky finish as the rest of it. You could turn this over and do it the opposite way that I do it, where it's just flat on top, because I've seen a lot of trays like that where it looks like one big chunky piece of wood on top. So it's just up to you. I just wanted the little walls around my tray just to keep everything confined into one area. But either way would be totally cute. So now I'm going to take my ping pong balls and attach those to the top of my stove cover, and I just put a ring of E6000 around the small hole, and then I did a dot of glue in between, right in the middle, so that they didn't touch too much. And then I'm going to place the ball a little bit hanging over the edge of the stove cover, and then put those down all the way around. I should have actually left a small gap in between each of those, but I didn't, so I didn't come out quite right, and so that now becomes the back because I have gaps a little bit larger. And so when you put this down, just make sure you have small gaps in between each of those balls so that it comes out just perfectly. So now I'm going to take my wax and put it onto a plate, and then using a paintbrush I'm going to do a dry brush effect, but I tested it out on the inside first where it won't show, just to see how light or dark I wanted it and if it would wipe off with a paper towel. And so once I figured out how I wanted it to look, I went ahead and did the outside, and before I glued the top down I wanted to place it up there so I could see what all was going to show, so I would know where to paint the balls. And then I just continued with that same distressing method all the way around, and then on my stove cover as well. So now to attach the top part, I'm just going to take a dollop of E6000. I don't like that word, dollop. I don't know why. But anyway, I just put a dot of glue on every other ping pong ball. And then I'm going to go in with my hot glue gun and do every other one in between. And you want to work fast because it dries pretty quickly, so I had my tray ready in the other hand, ready to put it on top, and made sure that that was all centered and ready to go. It was a little too dark for me, so I decided to go back in with some white, and some of the trays that you see, they have that white finish anyway, so I thought it made it look 10 times better, so I love how it turned out in the end. And here's how it turned out, and I think this is so sweet and just a cute little vignette to fill a space or a side table or something, but I just love the softness of it, and it just feels nice and cool and crisp to me. And as you can see, it took really no time at all, but I think still came out super cute and high-end looking, and I love it, and I hope you love it too. For our next project, I was so excited to find this cross wreath form. We'll be using a white wastebasket and then a mop head, and I was so excited to find this, I forgot to get the stick that goes with it. 2 packs of the styrofoam in white, and then a bag of the smaller pebble rocks. And then in my backyard, I had some larger rocks for weight. And then from Walmart, I got this eucalyptus, and I think they're $2 per sprig. And then Dollar Tree had Sharpie paint pens. I couldn't believe it, and it does work, and it's Sharpie. And then some Waverly White chalk paint, my glue gun, and my scissors. And so the first thing I did was pulled my mop head apart. And this was a little tricky and time consuming, but it was kind of fun too. It's like getting the knot out of a necklace. I don't know why I like doing that, but anyway, so I just pulled this apart, and I found that if you start pulling and then it stops, if you pull the other side and kind of get that untangled, it'll just keep coming until it comes all the way apart. And there were 3 sections to this, and so I rolled them up and set those aside, and I'll be able to use that for other projects. So now I'm going to start wrapping my cross, and I just tied a knot at the end starting from the base and pushed the end towards the inside where it won't show. And then I used a couple of dots of hot glue to get that to stay in place at the end, and I'm just going to start wrapping all the way up. I notice if you wrap too tightly, it'll pull the bars of the form in, so you want to make sure it's kind of nice and loose. Plus it still shows the little bumpities in that yarn or whatever it is. So if you just do it nice and loosely, it looks a lot better. So then I just wrapped all the way up, and then once I got to the crossbar, I just kept going and made a right turn and just kept wrapping. And then when I ran out of that yarn, I took another piece and tied a knot to it and then kept going. And then once I got to the end, I tied another knot and hot glued it down so that it would stay in place. And then I'm going to do that again starting from the top, and then I'll make a left turn. I was really loving how this was coming out the longer I was wrapping, because to me it looked like some sort of wicker, and it made a natural pattern as I was wrapping. And the softness of this, oh my goodness, you guys know how much I love different textures, and I'm pretty tactile, so I love the feel of soft materials. But this was so soft, and I just thought it looked so pretty, and you can't tell that it's a mop head. So now I'm going to use that little wooden medallion that I mistakenly showed you in the first project, and I painted it white, and then I'm going to use the paint pen from the Dollar Tree. And to use these, you just shake them up and then push on the tip until the paint is activated and comes down, and you'll know it's ready when the entire tip is black instead of white. So I'm just going to freehand rise and up. So it's going to say rise up. And you guys know I listen to my worship music while I'm crafting. And so a lot of my words or inspiration comes from whatever song happens to be playing. So if you guys have never heard the song Rise Up by Lauren Daigle, I'm going to link that in the description box below. And it's such a good song, and it's such a great message. And so I just love it and thought I would share it with you. But I just did the downstroke method, where you kind of do a faux calligraphy look by doing larger or thicker lines on the downstrokes. And that just gives it a pretty look, and it's cute. And then I'm going to take some glue and attach that to the middle portion to cover up those crossbars. And then I'm going to take my eucalyptus and cut those apart, and then very carefully put some hot glue on the ends, and then slide it up under that medallion so you don't see it, and it just peeks out up to the top left. So now I'm going to take my styrofoam and pop in the first one, and I'm not going to hot glue this down or anything, but I just made an indentation in the top portion, and I just left the plastic on it just to keep them together. And then I'm going to make it the length of the cross so that it can fit down inside of that. If you don't have these round ones, it really doesn't matter because it shouldn't show too much if you have scrap floral foam. But then I just used my hot glue and stuck it into the styrofoam, and then I'm going to put some rocks around the edge, and that's why I wanted to use the white styrofoam so that you couldn't really see it and it matches the basket. And so I just put my rocks in, the smaller ones on the bottom to cover the outside edges, and then I'm going to place my larger ones on top of that just to give it weight, because the bottom portion of the cross is freakishly long, and I don't know why they made it that long because it doesn't look like it's proportionate to a real cross. But anyway, I thought I would hide some of that by sticking it into the basket and then covering it up with the rocks. And then as an afterthought, I took some succulents that I got from Dollar Tree and just stuck those inside and just let them sit on top. And then I was going to wrap this around the edge of the basket and just hot glue it, but then I wanted to utilize the little holes, and so I just wrapped it around the ledge and kept going all the way around, and then I thought that gave it a really cute look, and then just tied a sweet little bow in the middle, and then cut off the bottoms and kind of frayed the very bottom of that bow on those tails, and so then it was done. A viewer had asked me a while back if I could come up with something that she could put at her loved one's gravesite, and I think this would be the perfect thing to put out there. I know our cemeteries clear away the flowers after so long, and so this you could just take with you and then put back later, and it's the perfect message. Rise up. And we're made up of 3 different parts. We have our body, soul, and spirit. So when we die, we want our soul and spirit to rise up, and we'll get our new bodies, I call them twilight bodies, at the second coming of Jesus. And so we don't want our bodies to rise up, because then that would be an episode of The Walking Dead. But I think it turned out really cute, and it's even got a flavor of boho to it because it's got the wicker look and the succulents and the eucalyptus. But I love this, and I hope you guys like it too. So if you are not new to my channel, you guys know that this is grandbaby number 3. This is Connor Brent Bowers, and he is 1 month old, a little over, and everybody's been asking how mommy and baby are doing, and they are doing amazing. So for our next project, I have this clock that we got at a yard sale for $30. It was a little pricey, but it's nice and large. It's 23.5 inches in diameter, and this is Ozzy, and so he's totally photobombing me right now, and he just stood there and just was wondering what was going on. So anyway, I'm going to take the little tags off of the clock. And I was kind of surprised. I didn't realize these are actually metal. And so I'm going to use those in another DIY at some point. But I just took the clock apart, took the tags off, and then I went outside and sanded it down really well. And I want this to possibly go in my brother and sister-in-law's makeover that we're doing, but I'm not 100% sure where it's going to go. So this is just giving us additional options. So I want to get this into more of a farmhouse style instead of that Tuscan look that it had before, which was really, really pretty. It's just not the style that we're going for in this project. So I just took my Waverly white chalk paint and painted a couple of coats on there. And then when it wasn't completely dry, because I want this to have kind of a shiplap look, I'm going to give it a little bit extra paint in some areas, and I'm going to go all in one direction so that it looks like it's got a wood finish to it. And so if you kind of just let it be a little thicker in areas and more paint, it tends to crack and look more realistic, I think, once we get the stripes on. So now I'm just taking the hands of the clock, and I'm using the gray that I used in some prior DIYs for their house. And I think that's a really good tip to keep some colors so that you can have that for additional projects that you need to put that same color into, and it'll always match. So now I'm just taking my ruler and I'm measuring every 4 inches, and I just do some pencil lines, and it doesn't have to be perfect because I know shiplap is not necessarily perfect or perfectly equal as far as the planks that go across it. So I'm going to just take a straight edge, and this is just a piece of plastic trim that I had, and I'm putting some paint onto my paintbrush and lightly going over in the straight line. And I want some places to be light and uneven, and I don't want perfect lines. So I'm just going to do that all the way down, and then I'm going to take my fan brush and I'm going to go over it with super dry bristles and give it some more detail and rustic distress. So once my paint was dry, I put my clock pieces back together and just screwed it on and used my pliers to get it on there nice and tightly, and then I'll add the hands back on there. And then I'm going to put it at the 12 o'clock position so that then I can use my finger to turn it to the correct times, and the hour hand will go at the right speed and get in the right placement so that I can tell where I'm going to put my numbers. So then I'm going to measure the size I need for my numbers that I'll be cutting out of my Silhouette Cameo 3, and I'm going to do that in black vinyl. But I wanted to show you close up how pretty this looks and how the cracking of the paint on top of paint looks so pretty and rustic. So now I'm going to make the numbers using Roman numerals, and I just cut it out of my Frisco Craft black vinyl, and I'll have that listed in the description box below as well as in my Amazon shop. And so I was able to get all of the numbers onto one 12 by 12 sheet, and I will have this in my Etsy shop so that if you have a clock that you want to make over, you can just let me know the dimensions and I will adjust it to fit your clock. So then I just cut out all of my numbers, and I'm going to take off the top piece of the vinyl, and there's no weeding on this because they're Roman numerals, which was fun. And so I'm just going to put those one by one in order, and I started with the 12 o'clock and then went to the 6 and then did the 9 and the 3, and then just moved my hand so that I would know where to place each of those numbers. I did the top portion from the 9 o'clock to the 3 o'clock. So 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, and 3, I did all facing with the bottoms down. And then on the bottom portion, I did also facing down, whereas they would have been upside down if I did it all the way in the same direction, if that makes sense. So here it is, all done, and it was not a lot of work and there wasn't a lot of steps, but I think it made a huge transformation. And like I said, it's for my brother and sister-in-law, but I will not be sad if I don't find a space for it. I can find a space in my house too, but I just love the way that this turned out. And I don't really know how much clock mechanisms are with hands this large, but this would be a great project to do on top of one of those round wood, those old three-legged tables that everybody used to have, the little accent tables. So if you could find one of those, you could make this for even cheaper. And so even though it was $30, like I said, I may or may not put this in their house just to kind of keep that budget going in the right direction. And so I love this. I love how it turned out. I also wanted to tell you guys that I have my new merchandise designs in my Teespring store down below right under the video. And so I have the Be the Light line, and also my Colossians 1:17, which says Jesus is the glue that holds me together, and it's got a glue gun, so it's really cute. And I just put some infant onesies in there too, because I have to get one of those for Connor. And I'm also gonna put a link to the video where I made these black candle holders and the eucalyptus bottles, and that should be flying by right about now. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, comment, and let me know what you think. I hope you have a blessed day, and remember to always be the light. Bye!